At some point, have you ever felt bad about taking the day off, eating your favorite food, or taking a little extra time to care for yourself? Or maybe people have told you you're selfish for putting your own needs first. Now it's time to talk about these feelings and look into the interesting place where self-love and what some might call selfishness meet. This video goes into the thoughts of some of the most important philosophers and scientists from throughout history. These are thinkers who have been brave enough to question the status quo and show us how self-love and selfishness affect our lives in deep ways. Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, Aristotle, Ayn Rand, Jean-Paul Sartre, Buddha, and Erich Fromm all had ideas that changed the world. We will find the secret knowledge in what they taught and use what we learned to improve our own lives. The world around us gives us mixed messages all the time about how to love ourselves and be selfish. On the one hand, we're told to be kind and selfless, to put others before ourselves, though we are told it's okay to love ourselves and that our own wants should come first. When we get these mixed messages, we might feel lost and guilty, not sure how to find the right balance. You can use what we're talking about today in your personal and business life because of this. To live happier, more peaceful lives, we need to learn more about self-love and greed. We can learn to love ourselves with all of our flaws and strengths without feeling bad or being seen as selfish if we set limits and make time for ourselves. I used to have a hard time with these very ideas. I would sometimes skip rest, fun, and even health just to keep from being seen as selfish. I would do anything to help other people, even if it meant putting my own health at risk. Before I started learning philosophy and psychology, I didn't understand how important it is to love yourself and be selfish in some ways. These lessons not only changed my personal life, but they also had a big effect on my work life, making me happier and more successful. I think this series has something useful to offer you, whether you're here out of interest, to grow as a person, or to learn things that will help you do better at work. We'll work together to dispel common myths, see things from different angles, and start a trip to learn more about ourselves and our place in the world. Self-love is more than just going to the spa or eating out at a nice restaurant, though those things can be a part of it. In fact, self-love is a much deeper and more meaningful idea. It means accepting ourselves completely, flaws and all. It's about recognizing our own worth and being kind and respectful to ourselves. Self-love isn't about being perfect. It's about being okay with how you are. It's about realizing that we're not perfect and that it's okay to mess up. It means showing ourselves the same kindness, understanding and patience that we show to other people. It's not vain or cocky to love yourself. It means recognizing our humanity, our unique mix of strengths and flaws, and appreciating ourselves just the way we are. To love ourselves, we must also take care of our physical, mental, and social health. It's about setting limits, taking care of ourselves, following our hobbies, and putting our wants first. It's about taking care of our bodies, keeping our heads active, and keeping our souls healthy. What does this have to do with being selfish? Now we'll talk about the next word, selfishness. Most of the time, it means something bad. Most of the time, it's used to describe someone who puts their own needs ahead of others, even if it means hurting them or ignoring their needs. But there is more than one side to this story, as there are to many ideas. When we talk about greed in this situation, we're not talking about this harmful, careless behavior. This time, we're talking about a better, healthy kind of selfishness, one in which we make choices that are good for our own well-being, even if they don't always go along with what other people want. This is the kind of selfishness that lets us say no when we're too busy, follow our dreams even if they go against social rules, and put ourselves first even if it seems like a luxury. Although we understand that other people have needs that are important, we also know that our own needs are important. Being selfish and loving yourself might seem like they have a difficult relationship, but they do. So, we have to be a little selfish if we want to really love ourselves. We have to be ready to put our own needs first, set limits, and make decisions that are good for our health and happiness. And in order to be positively greedy, we must first see how valuable we are, which means we must love ourselves. Self-love and a good amount of ego go hand in hand. They are like two parts of the same coin. Both are important for our health and growth. We can handle life with strength, confidence, and inner peace because self-love and selfishness work together in a powerful way. But how did these kinds of ideas come about? How have they changed over time? And how do they fit into the big picture of psychological and philosophical thought? As we watch this movie, we'll look into these and other questions, looking at them from the interesting points of view of different thinkers and scientists, and finding the deep insights they offer. Remember that this is not meant to promote ego in the bad sense, where people ignore others and hurt them. We want to show you how to have a healthy, balanced sense of self that lets you stand up for your needs, know how valuable you are, and still care about and respect the people around you. Why it's important to love yourself for mental health. This is the start of our discussion on self-love and healthy greed. These are two ideas that are deeply linked and play key roles in our mental health, personal growth, and general well-being. To understand why loving yourself is so important for mental health, we need to look at biology, psychology, and how people act. There is a direct link between how we see ourselves and our mental health that has been known for decades by psychologists and experts. Let's picture gardens in our heads. Now, you would think that a yard full of love, happiness, and care would grow well. Similarly, our brains can grow when they are filled with self-love. The weeds of self-doubt, self-criticism, and negative self-talk can poison our mental soil and cause anxiety, sadness, and other mental health problems. Self-love is like a natural defense against these things. When we love ourselves, we give our feelings and situations value. We let ourselves feel what we need to, and that our feelings are important. This kind of support can stop people from repressing their emotions, which is often a sign of mental discomfort. Self-love gives us the courage to deal with life's problems head-on. We don't have to break down when things get tough or stress us out. Instead, we can stand tall, knowing that we can and should get through these problems. Being resilient is important for keeping your mental health in good shape and dealing with the ups and downs of life. What does good greed have to do with this, though? If self-love is the dirt that our mental garden grows in, then healthy greed is the act of taking care of that garden and making sure it gets the food it needs. When we are selfish in a healthy way, we know what we need and do what we can to get it. Despite our busy lives, it's about making time for ourselves, putting our health first, and not being afraid to set limits. By putting our needs first, we can learn more about ourselves, improve our skills, and follow our hobbies, which leads to personal growth. Also, being healthy selfish teaches us the importance of saying no to overcommitting, making others happy, and overextending ourselves. A lot of us fall into these traps, and it hurts our mental and emotional health. It's good to be selfish, and learning to say no to things that drain us is an important part of growing as a person. Self-love and healthy greed work together to make a powerful force that helps us live a peaceful, happy, and full life. They keep our minds in balance, help us grow as people, and give us the confidence and strength to face life's challenges. Loving ourselves builds a mental garden that is good for having good feelings, high self-esteem, and staying strong. We take care of this plant by being greedy in a healthy way, giving it the love, attention, and food it needs to grow. Together, These ideas help us live a life where we can stand tall, not moved by the winds of outside support or reinforcement, but firmly grounded in self-love and respect. Finally, we can find a balance where we can meet our own wants while also caring about those of others. As we go on, we'll keep digging deeper into these ideas to find the wisdom that lies within them. We'll do this with the help of the deep thoughts of thinkers and psychologists whose lessons have shown us the way to healthy ego and self-love. We won't just learn about ideas, we'll also learn useful information that can change our lives. Let's go down this path with an open mind and a desire to learn. Rogers, Carl, the important philosopher. Carl Rogers is our first stop. Rogers is known as one of the founders of humanistic psychology, and his ideas have had a lasting impact on the field. Let's go inside his head and find out how he feels about loving yourself. Carl Rogers was a leader in his field. He was born in 1902. His focus on the individual human experience and self-actualization changed the way people thought about these things and went against the popular psychoanalysis and behaviorist views of the time. Rogers' method was person-centered, which means he focused on the good qualities and growing possibilities in each person. His work has a long impact on psychology, counseling, and psychotherapy because it is full of kindness and understanding. Rogers thought that people needed to feel total positive regard in order to reach a state of self-actualization, which is the best level of psychological growth and the point at which a person realizes their full potential. Rogers came up with this phrase to describe fully accepting and loving oneself, no matter what or who you are. Rogers' humanistic psychology sees it as the very essence of self-love. Unconditional is the most important word here. Rogers said that self-love shouldn't depend on how much you think you're worth. It shouldn't depend on how well you do in school, how well other people like you, or how well you follow social rules. Therefore, he pushed for self-love that isn't affected by these outside factors and is based on knowing and accepting one's own unique, innate worth. Rogers says that loving yourself is not a sign of ego or pride. It's not about thinking you're better than other people. It's about recognizing your own worth, being open to your own experiences, and believing what you think and feel. Rogers thought that this kind of self-love is essential for personal growth and reaching one's full potential. When we love ourselves no matter what, we make it safe to explore and learn about ourselves. We let mistakes happen and learn from them, which helps us grow as people. We also develop an internal center of evaluation, which means we trust our own decisions and don't just look to other people's ideas to back them up. Roger thinks that loving ourselves also means accepting that we can change and grow. It has to do with realizing that we are not fixed things, but are always changing. When we love ourselves in this way, we accept who we are right now and look forward to who we can become. Rogers' therapy was also based on the idea that a therapist's job was to create an atmosphere of truthfulness, understanding, and total positive respect so that their clients could love themselves and grow. He said that people automatically move toward better self-understanding, self-acceptance, and self-actualization when they are in such a setting. That shows Rogers' faith in the healing power of loving yourself. Rogers' view on self-love not only changed the way therapy is done, but it also has a lot to do with what we're talking about. His ideas give us a new way of looking at things. They encourage us to love ourselves no matter what, and they show us that loving ourselves can help us grow and become our best selves. Another important psychologist whose work we will now look at is Abraham Maslow. Like Carl Rogers, Maslow was a pioneer of humanistic psychology. Maslow's ideas about the order of wants and self-actualization give us a strong way to look at our conversation. The famous American psychologist Abraham Maslow was born in 1908 and made a big difference in the field with his humanistic method. This way of thinking, which is sometimes called the third force in psychology, stressed that people are good by nature and that healthy mental growth is very important. Maslow is probably best known for his theory of the hierarchy of needs, which is still used today in business, marketing, psychology, and even education. Maslow put the idea of self-actualization at the top of his hierarchy of needs because it was the most important thing to him. Maslow said that self-actualization is the process of reaching your full potential over time. This idea is connected to what we talked about when we talked about self-love and healthy greed, because it includes the idea of growing and improving yourself. At the base of Maslow's ladder of needs are basic needs like food and water. At the top are self-actualization needs. Maslow says that people must first meet their basic wants in order to go after their more important ones. In other words, someone must first meet their needs for safety, love and connection, and respect before they can try to become their best selves. Self-love and greed can be seen in a very interesting way through this idea. In the framework of Maslow's structure, loving yourself is an important part of meeting all of these needs. The more we love ourselves, the more we take care of our wants, from the physical to the mental. Self-care, which could be seen as a good form of selfishness, is an important step on the path to becoming your best self. Maslow also talked about how important self-esteem was in the order. He did this to show how self-love and respect are for personal growth. It was his idea that people need to respect themselves and others in order to move up the system. Self-love is very important because it's what makes self-esteem and self-respect possible. In addition, the search for self-actualization can be seen as a good form of greed. Maslow says that seeking personal growth, satisfaction, and high moments is a part of self-actualization. It's about getting better at being yourself. It could be seen as selfish to pursue this goal, but it is a good and healthy one because it leads to personal growth and joy by focusing on one's own wants and growth. A certain amount of greed is important for living a happy life, according to Maslow's theory. But it's important to remember that Maslow also saw transcending, helping others, and seeing a link with the rest of humanity as part of self-actualization. Maslow's view adds an interesting new layer to what we know about loving yourself and being selfish in a healthy way. His writing shows us the way to self-actualization by focusing on how self-love helps us meet our wants and how healthy greed is for our personal growth. One of the most important thinkers in history, Aristotle, is now our subject as we look into the world of old knowledge. His wide-ranging work on everything from philosophy to ethics and politics has influenced thought for hundreds of years and can still teach us a lot about self-love and healthy greed. Aristotle was born in 384 BC. He studied under Plato and then taught Alexander the Great. He opened the Athens school Lyceum and taught there for more than 10 years. His work had a huge impact on Western thought and laid the groundwork for many later philosophical ideas and ways of doing things. Eudaimonia, which is often translated as happiness or flourishing, is one of the most important ideas in Aristotle's ethics. Aristotle said that eudaimonia is the most important thing in life and in thought. But it's not a short-lived state of pleasure or happiness. It's a permanent state of being that comes from living a good life and reaching your full potential. The idea of eudaimonia is closely linked to the ideas of self-love and reasonable self-interest. Aristotle said that loving oneself is not only okay, it's important for eudaimonia. He thought that self-love wasn't about being selfish, but about wanting and working toward what is good for yourself. Aristotle's idea of reasonable self-interest is related to his idea of self-love. He said that we are logical humans who want to reach our fullest potential by nature. So, to truly love ourselves, we need to seek virtue and knowledge and basically become the best versions of ourselves. Healthy selfishness means wanting to grow and be happy for yourself without hurting other people, and as a way to make the world a better place. Let's look at some real-world examples to help you understand how Aristotle's ideas can be used. Like, let's say you're an artist. According to Aristotle, loving yourself means putting in the time and effort to get better at what you do, find and use your own unique artistic style, and reach your fullest potential. You can make a difference in the world in your own unique way by realizing your interest and ability. Or think about a situation where you have to choose between a high-paying job that you don't like and a lower-paying job that you really want. Aristotle said that one way to love themselves is to choose the road that makes them truly happy and helps them reach their full potential, even if it seems harder or less profitable. These cases show what Aristotle meant by eudaimonia, which is a happy life that you achieve by being good and doing your best. Self-love and a certain amount of ego are not only good, they are necessary in this situation. As a result, they push us to become better people and reach our full potential, which is good for us individually and, by extension, for our communities. Aristotle's knowledge opens up a new way to think about self-love and healthy greed. It supports the idea that these ideas are not at odds with each other, but work together to make a happy life. His ideas make us think about our abilities, our interests, and the decisions we make. He stresses the significance of loving ourselves well and making smart decisions for our own benefit in our search for eudaimonia. We are now in the company of Ayn Rand, a controversial but important figure in both writing and thought. Ayn Rand was born in Russia in 1905 and moved to the United States in the 1920s. It was there that she created objectivism, the philosophical system that her books like The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged explain. Rand's philosophy supports a kind of moral egoism she called the virtue of selfishness. This gives us a unique way to look at self-love and healthy greed. Objectivism, Rand's theory, says that the most important thing in life is to be happy. She pushed for a kind of logical selfishness in which each person's own life and happiness are their most important goals. Objectivism says that everyone has a moral duty to look out for themselves, not help others, and protect their own rights. Rand says in her book, The Virtue of Selfishness, that her idea of selfishness is not caring about other people, but not being willing to give up something for them. It's important to note that Rand's idea of reasonable greed doesn't support hurting or taking advantage of other people. It's about being true to yourself, sticking to your goals and beliefs, and living in a way that makes you happy in the end. Rand said that people should use reason to figure out what is best for themselves and not fall for the trap of quick satisfaction or short-term benefits that come at the cost of long-term well-being. Let's break down Rand's idea of reasonable greed to get a better sense of her point of view. The word rational is very important here. Rand says that being selfish doesn't mean acting on feelings or short-term wants, but rather acting in a way that is good for you in the long run. Rand says that someone who is truly selfish would never hurt others, lie, or steal, because it would not make sense for them to do those things. It breaks down trust, hurts relationships, and makes life difficult in the long run. Aristotle talks about self-love in the same way that Rand talks about selfishness. It involves a strong sense of self-respect and self-esteem. Rand says that being selfish means loving yourself, staying true to your ideals, and looking for ways to grow and be happy. Indeed, Rand says that this kind of logical greed is necessary for a society to be fair. Everyone should look out for their own best interests and accept the rights of others to do the same. This will create a society where people work together and value each other. Rand thought that a world where everyone is rationally selfish would have free, happy people living together peacefully and respecting each other's rights. As we talk about self-love and healthy greed, Ayn Rand gives us a thought-provoking point of view. Her support for sensible selfishness goes against common sense and makes us think again about what selfishness means to us and how it affects our lives. It's a stark reminder of how important it is to live our lives in line with our ideals and our own best interests, and to understand the basic role this plays in our general health and happiness. There's no doubt that recognizing and supporting our own self-interest is a good thing, even if some people think her ideas are too extreme or just cold-hearted support for egocentrism. We not only find personal happiness by doing this, but we also help make society more honest, open, and, in the end, peaceful. Being wise. Our intellectual journey now takes us to the peaceful world of Stoicism, where we meet Epictetus, a famous thinker from this school of thought. Born around the year 55 AD as a slave. In Phrygia, Epictetus became one of the most important Stoic thinkers. No matter how hard his early life was, his lessons have been useful for hundreds of years and are still relevant today. Stoicism is a way of thinking that says ethics, wisdom, and morals are the best ways to be happy. We may not be able to change what happens to us, but we can change how we react to it. Stoic philosophy says that we should be cool and accept our fate and situations, while focused on getting better by being smart, self-disciplined, and good. Epictetus was a famous Stoic philosopher who is best known for his ideas about inner freedom and self-control. Some of his most important books, like Discourses and Enchiridion, go into great detail about these ideas. Epictetus says we need to know the difference between what we can control, like our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and what we can't, like outside events, other people's actions, or their views. This knowledge is what his theory and Stoic thinking as a whole are built on. Epictetus's idea of self-control goes beyond just fighting urges or acting without thinking. Instead, it's about being able to control how we feel and respond to things happening around us. It means realizing that our inner state, or happiness, is not determined by what happens to us, but by how we answer it. This point of view is very much in line with self-love because it tells us to take care of our mental and emotional health and keep our inner peace. Self-care is very important in Stoicism because it stresses the need to stay calm, emotionally strong, and morally honest. Self-care and Stoicism are not just about relaxing or indulging, despite what most people think. It means keeping your mind, body, and soul in balance by doing things like meditating, reflecting, and taking care of your health. It also means developing our reason, controlling our feelings, and increasing our virtue, all of which are connected to loving yourself and acting in your own best interests. The lessons of Epictetus and Stoic thought are very similar to the ideas of loving yourself and looking out for your own best interests. He tells us to put our inner peace first, think clearly, and be decent. These are all kinds of self-love and self-interest. But the thought of keeping your self-control and personal freedom may be the most important thing that they have in common. This practice makes us more aware of how important it is to respect ourselves, know ourselves, and be responsible for our mental health. These are all important parts of loving ourselves and acting in our own best interests. Putting Epictetus's ideas into practice in our daily lives can have big impacts. Let's say that a project at work is making you feel worried. In that case, don't let your worry take over. Instead, use Epictetus's advice to focus on what you can manage. You can't change how the job turns out, but you can change how hard you work on it, how you use your time, and how you deal with stress. Or, if you are having a hard time with your self-esteem, reading Epictetus's writings on inner freedom can help. Understand that your worth is not based on what other people say or what happens to you, but on your good qualities, what you do, and your inner happiness. Our next guide is Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher and one of the most important figures in existential philosophy. He will help us find our way through the complicated maze of self-love and selfishness. Sartre was born in Paris in 1905 and wrote and thought a lot. His ideas have had a big impact on Western philosophy, especially existentialism and phenomenology. Existentialism, the philosophical movement that Sartre helped spread, is based on the idea that each person has a unique experience in a world that is either not caring about them or even unfriendly to them. People in this school of thought value freedom, choice, and responsibility. Existentialists believe that everyone has the power to give their life meaning. This power, while freeing, also comes with the heavy duty of choice. Sartre's famous philosophical idea is that existence precedes essence, which means that as people, we exist first, and then it is up to each of us to shape our essence or nature. At the heart of Sartre's idea of authenticity is this psychological freedom, living in a way that is true to yourself, regardless of what other people think or expect of you. Sartre thought that being real meant accepting this psychological freedom and being fully responsible for our actions, choices, and the results that come from them. Realizing that we write our own lives and can't put the blame on other people or outside events is what it's all about. In Sartre's words, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. There are interesting links between being real, loving yourself, and being selfish. Sartre's idea of authenticity is linked to self-love and healthy greed because it tells us to be true to ourselves and put our beliefs and values first. It's about being aware of what we want, owning the decisions we make, and living in line with who we really are. This is about liking yourself enough to live in a way that is true to who you are, even if that means going against what other people think is right. But Sartre's sincerity isn't about being self-centered and staring into space. It's about freedom and duty. It's not a reason to ignore other people or avoid doing what you need to do. Instead, it's a call to be real with our freedom and the choices it gives us. There is a small but important difference between this and greed. Being real means being aware of and acting on our wants, but it doesn't mean stepping on other people to get what we want. Think about your connections with other people to see how Sartre's idea of truthfulness can be used in real life. Being real means telling the truth about your needs and feelings, even if they're different from what your partner, friend, or family wants. It's about being brave enough to be yourself and not giving up your ideals or morals to make other people happy. When you're at work, living sincerely might mean picking a job path that makes you happy instead of one that is famous or pays well. It means recognizing your goals and passions and being responsible for the decisions that are in line with them. Sartre's idea of sincerity is an interesting way to look at self-love and healthy greed. His philosophical philosophy tells us to enjoy our freedom, take responsibility for our lives, and be brave enough to live honestly. This helps us learn more about self-love and greed. Buddhist thought. Let's keep going on our intellectual trip. This time we'll go east and find safety under the Bodhi tree of Buddhism. Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha, taught this old theory in the 6th century BC. The Buddha's lessons have been passed down through the years and have helped millions of people around the world. The 4 noble truths are at the heart of Buddha's lessons. They explain what pain is, why it happens, how to stop it, and the way to do it. The Noble Eightfold Path is what the Buddha said you should do to end your pain and reach nirvana, which is a state of perfect peace and understanding. The middle way, which is also called the Noble Eightfold Path, is an important part of what the Buddha taught. The middle way is a road of balance, somewhere between giving in to your wants and not giving in to your needs. It stays away from both sides and instead encourages a calm and thoughtful way of living. The Buddha found this way after trying both extreme poverty and lavish wealth and learning that neither was the way to true happiness or enlightenment. This road covers all areas of life, including knowledge, morality, and mental control. It includes having the right view, the right intention, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right concentration. These things, taken together, make up a healthy way of life that helps people be free from pain. When we look at what the middle way means for self-love and selfishness, we see an interesting relationship. Self-love in the Buddhist view can be thought of as caring about your own, both physical and mental health. Developing healthy mental states and reducing unhealthy ones are part of it. Self-love is a good example of the middle way because it means taking care of yourself without going too far in the directions of vanity or self-neglect. However, Buddhism doesn't see selfishness as a bad thing in and of itself. Instead, it sees selfishness in bad forms, like greed, hate, and ignorance, as something to be avoided. People believe that these things cause pain and lead people away from the right road. Being selfish in a healthy way, like caring about your own health, is important in Buddhism because it helps you develop self-love and kindness, which are very important for living the middle way. Let's talk about meditation, which is an important part of Buddhist practice. One way to look at meditation is as a healthy form of self-love. You spend this time alone, focusing on yourself and developing a calm and aware state of mind. This practice is very much in line with the middle way because it promotes balance and stays away from extremes like focusing too much on others or not caring about anything at all. What does the middle way mean in real life? It can help us balance our personal and work lives so that we can meet our own needs without ignoring our duties to others. It can motivate us to live a healthy life, not giving in to physical pleasures too much or denying ourselves happiness and comfort. Because of this, it teaches us to be calm, accepting, and kind, not just to others, but also to ourselves. There is a fine line between loving yourself and being selfish, and the Buddha's middle way shows us how to walk that line. To avoid going too far in either direction, self-indulgence or self-denial, it tells us to love ourselves and have a good sense of self-interest. To learn more about our topic, we will look to the middle of the 20th century and the work of Erich Fromm, a German social psychologist, psychotherapist, economist, and liberal philosopher. Fromm was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1900. His thoughts went beyond academia and gave us deep insights into love, society, and how people act. Fromm is best known for The Art of Loving, a book he wrote in 1956. In this important work, he shows love not as a feeling that can be changed by desire or outside factors, but as an art that needs to be honed and grown. Fromm says that to practice love, you need to be disciplined, focused, patient, and able to get past your selfishness. Most importantly, you need to be able to love yourself. According to Fromm, loving yourself is not the same as being narcissistic or conceited. Loving others and loving yourself are two sides of the same coin. They can't be separated. Fromm says that loving yourself means recognizing your worth and not hating yourself for your flaws. Loving yourself deeply is what makes it possible for other people to love you deeply. Fromm wrote, "In the experience of love lies the only answer to being human, lies sanity. He thought that a person's love for themselves and others was linked to their mental health. Love isn't possible without self-love, and self-love isn't possible without the love for others, he said. In real life, Fromm's idea of self-love tells us to keep a balance between caring for ourselves and caring for others. It means being aware of our own wants and needs, while also thinking about and considering the wants and needs of others. It disagrees with the idea that loving yourself is a selfish and self-centered thing to do. Instead, it sees love as something that includes everyone and goes beyond the self. Fromm's idea tells us to practice active listening, understanding, and mutual respect in all of our interactions, whether they are personal or professional. These qualities come from the love we have for ourselves and for others. It makes us patient, not just with other people, but also with ourselves as we go through life's difficulties. For personal growth and development, Fromm's idea tells us to accept our flaws and work on them without hating or being too hard on ourselves. Self-criticism and self-reflection are good things to do because they help us grow as people and learn more about ourselves. Fromm's view that loving yourself is an important part of loving others adds a new dimension to our knowledge of self-love and selfishness. His writings help us see that loving ourselves is not a selfish act, but an important step toward loving others and living a good life. As we look at self-love and selfishness from different philosophical and psychological points of view, we come across a mix of ideas that are all different but have some things in common. By contrasting and comparing these points of view, we can better understand their richness and variety, and it also helps us apply these ideas to our everyday lives. We saw that self-love and the idea of self-actualization go hand in hand, starting with Carl Rogers. Having a good view of yourself lets you fully explore your strengths and weaknesses. Abraham Maslow's order of needs brings up the idea of self-actualization again, stressing the importance of loving ourselves as a key part of reaching our fullest potential. The idea of eudaimonia by Aristotle, which means happiness through self-realization and the achievement of personal excellence, is related. On the other hand, Ayn Rand's objectivism presents the idea of rational greed, which says that the best moral goal is to pursue one's own self-interest in a logical way. This is different from Epictetus's Stoic view, which encourages self-control and inner freedom, striving for peace and virtue instead of instant pleasure. Existentialism by Jean-Paul Sartre pushes us to find what is truly real. It suggests that loving ourselves means accepting our freedom and being responsible for our actions. Buddha's middle way, on the other hand, shows us how to find a balance between self-denial and self-indulgence. It stresses the importance of being selfish and loving yourself at the same time. Erich Fromm brings these different points of view together by saying that loving ourselves is an art that is necessary for loving others. His work makes the point that liking yourself and loving others are connected. Even though they come from different times and places, these thinkers and scientists all agree on how important it is to love yourself and be selfish in a healthy way. Every one of them knows that loving yourself isn't a sign of ego or selfishness, but an important part of being healthy and living a full life. The idea of greed is also changed so that it is seen as a good way to take care of yourself and not as a sign of not caring about other people. When we think about how these points of view can be used in modern life, we can learn a lot. Self-love means knowing how valuable you are and being kind and respectful to yourself. It means knowing what our physical, social, and mental wants are and meeting them. Being healthy selfish, on the other hand, means having limits and making time for yourself even when you're busy. It's about standing up for our own goals while still caring about and understanding other people. These moral and psychological points of view remember us that we need to take care of ourselves too, even though the world often tells us to put other people's needs before our own. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. By taking care of ourselves, we make it easier to make the world a better place and make the lives of those around us better. Philosophers and scientists like these should be our guides as we go on our own journeys. Let their ideas guide us as we walk through the areas of self-love and selfishness. We are trying to find a balance that helps us grow as people and makes for a good life. Always remember that self-love and healthy greed don't get in the way of our growth. They actually help it. They are what keep us going in a life that is not only good, but also important, satisfying, and truly our own.